Welcome to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. In-depth conversations and opinion covering a variety of topics from the world of news, sports, and more. Here's Mike McFeely.
Welcome to another episode of the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. Very special guest today on the pod, a first-time guest, but somebody who will not be a last-time guest because Jim Shaw, former TV news reporter, news director, current columnist for the Forum, current radio talk show guest host and guest frequently on KFGO with Joel Heitkamp and that crew. He is in the Forum building today in downtown Fargo, 101 5th Street North, and he joins us on the pod today because I wanted to talk about a couple of things with him, and including, Jim, welcome to the pod, first of all. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for the invite, and thank you for the wonderful intro. I'm not sure I'm worthy of all that, but I'll take it.
You're incredibly worthy. Don't sell yourself short, Judge. You're incredibly worthy of that. So I'm just going to get right into it because I'm excited to talk about it. But moments ago, literally moments ago, and I hate when people use the word literally because it rarely is literally, but in this case, it's true. Literally moments ago, I ran across a clip from CNN on which North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum appeared, and he was talking with Caitlin Collins, and the subject was Donald Trump, because Governor Burgum has become a surrogate leech pool boy for Donald Trump. But Caitlin Collins was asking Governor Burgum about, sort of his vice presidential chances. And so she asked a question that I think is a good question if you're talking about a potential vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump. And I'm going to play some audio here. I didn't have time to get it in the proper place, but I played it for Jim before we turned on the podcast. I quickly cranked out a column in about 20 minutes about it. But Governor Doug Burgum would not answer the question of whether or not he would have certified the 2020 election results in Congress on January 6th, 2021. And we all know what happened on January 6th, 2021. I'm going to play the audio into my microphone off my phone, and hopefully it comes across. But then I'm going to ask you, Jim Shaw, what you think about it, because I know what I think about it, and I just wrote about it.
I'm just curious, if you were Trump's vice president on January 6th, would you have done what Mike Pence did?
Well, I think that all the speculation about who's going to be in the cabinet, who's going to be vice president, is just a distraction from what has to happen, which is the party's got to focus on Donald Trump winning in November. I mean, he's got to have so many people that want to serve in this administration that he's going to be able to pick the people of his choosing at the time that makes sense for him. And I think Republicans need to stay focused on that.
I understand that, but you are on the short list. You're a name that I hear from sources that they talk about. Do you think that Mike Pence did the right thing that day?
Well, I don't know if I'm on the short list or not, but I do know that what this election is going to be about, it's going to be about the things that matter to Americans. And when you've got our economy right now that's been juiced by the trillions of dollars of spending, I mean, the actual economic growth of the actual economy of the goods.
And we can stop it there, Jim, because he goes on, and later Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, was a guest with Caitlin Collins, and he tore Burgum apart, I think rightly. What are your thoughts on what you just heard from Governor Doug Burgum?
Oh, my goodness, where to begin? Let's start with the fact that not once but twice he completely ducked the question and switched subjects. He wouldn't even answer the question, and this was a softball question. Number two, it tells me who Doug Burgum really is, and he is such a disappointment. When he came into office, a lot of us thought he was going to be a fresh face, new perspective, moderate, not really part of any political alignment, but an independent thinker. And he has become a bootlicking part of the Trump MAGA cult. He is just kissing Trump's butt left and right. And so for Doug Burgum right now, It's not about what's best for the country. It's about what's best for Doug Burgum, and Doug Burgum is obviously lobbying for a cabinet post. I don't think he'll get vice president, but it's clear Trump wants him to be in his cabinet. But the bigger issue among all that is it is 100% crystal clear that Joe Biden won the 2020 election fair and square. This case has been argued and argued. It went to 60 different judges, and they all said no. Bill Barr, Trump's suck-up attorney general, said there was nothing. Trump's election security guy said there was nothing. It's a big nothing burger. There is zero proof, nada, nothing, that the election was stolen or there was any significant election fraud. And so for Doug Burgum to not even acknowledge that he would have certified the election is appalling. What Burgum is saying is that he's against free and fair elections, that the only thing matters is that the guy he wants to win should win, whether or not he got the most votes or not. And this is a frightening part of this election where our democracy is being undermined by not only Donald Trump, but by suck-ups like Doug Burgum who play along with the big lie.
It's dangerous as well, and I agree with everything you said, and everything you said was accurate and factual. It's dangerous in that Doug Burgum is siding with the insurrectionists. I mean, January 6th, right? I mean, part of that was Mike Pence going before Congress, and ceremonially, by the way. I mean, the vice president really does not have the power constitutionally.
And that's a huge point.
To decide who is going to be the next president. It's a ceremonial. He stands up before Congress and says he waves his flag or whatever, and says he certifies it. It's a ceremonial position, like much of the vice president's job is. But what happened after that, and that day, the photographs and the videos you see of people climbing the U.S. Capitol and breaking windows and hitting police officers with flagpoles and smearing excrement on the walls of Congress and people sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office and the gallows that were set up to hang Mike Pence, which is what Trump's supporters said they wanted to do, was hang Mike Pence because he wouldn't hand the election, again, something he couldn't do under the Constitution, to Donald Trump. Doug Burgum, by refusing to answer Caitlin Collins' question directly with a yes or a no, is siding with the insurrectionists.
Absolutely he is.
He's saying that was all okay.
It's outrageous.
He's implicitly saying to that crowd of people, who, by the way, the Republicans need to win elections, he's saying to them, I'm on your side. It's unconscionable.
It is. And you know what strikes probably you and me both is we know Doug Burgum knows better. We know he's a smart guy. We know he can see the big picture. And yet he has thrown his principles and his scruples out the window in his never-ending support for Donald Trump because he hopes he will benefit from it, which he would if Donald Trump is elected president. But
we
January 6th was not just another day in American history. It was horrifying. It was a coup attempt, something unprecedented in American history. And for Doug Burgum to take the side of the insurrectionists is frightening.
Now, if you could get some truth serum into Governor Burgum, if he was in this room and we had some truth serum in him, he might say, well, the trouble is that it's not so much loyalty to the Republican Party or to America that gets you places in the current Republican Party under Donald Trump. It's loyalty to Donald Trump that gets you places in the Republican Party. So,
true.
What Doug Burgum, and he's right, it would be right, but what Doug Burgum might argue is if I hope to be vice president or energy secretary or secretary of the interior, I have to play the game. I have to say what Donald Trump wants me to say because as you and I know, Jim, and Governor Burgum does as well, that Donald Trump demands 100% loyalty and fealty and bootlicking and whatever other phrase you can come up with. Otherwise, you're out.
Correct.
You are out.
Correct.
And so that doesn't make it right, though.
No.
That might make it more wrong, in my view, as an American who has different political views than both Donald Trump and Doug Burgum. At some point, the Republican Party and people like Doug Burgum, who are, again, smart, we think moderate thinkers, they have to stand up. Nobody will stand up.
Well, you have a few, and look where it got them. Liz Cheney, she lost her House seat. Nikki Haley at the end of her campaign, and now she's done running for president. Adam Kinzinger, he left the House. But there are the only people who are standing up, and this really bothers me, are the people who used to work for Trump, who were right next to him, and have told the American people how dangerous he is and how clueless he is and how he doesn't care about any traditional American values. And again, it doesn't register. It's just so disturbing that no matter all the horror stories we hear about Donald Trump, people who are voting for Trump, they're in. There is nothing you can say to them that's going to change their mind. They are in favor of a guy who is against 200 and almost 50 years of what America has stood for. And now Trump he's going to tear all that down.
If he's elected, he has not won the election yet, although we talked before I hit the record button here. You believe that if the election was held today, that Donald Trump would beat Joe Biden.
Yes, I'm a political geek, and I check the polls every night. And as you know, in this country, it doesn't matter who gets the most votes, it's who gets the most electoral votes, which is a really bizarre, stupid system. So it really is going to come down to about 6 swing states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. Trump is winning all those states. If he wins those states, it's game over. Doesn't matter how Biden does in California or New York. And believe me, I hope Biden can turn it around for the betterment of this country, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Maybe a Trump conviction might help, but right now, Donald Trump is the odds-on favorite to be our next president.
Is Doug Burgum, and this has been suggested by some in North Dakota, and, Rob Port has a different take on why Doug Burgum is doing what he's doing, but is Doug Burgum playing four-dimensional chess? And is he saying, I need to do this because we need some sanity in the next Trump administration? Or is he strictly doing it out of personal ambition and power and relevancy that he's never had before? In your opinion?
In my opinion, it's all personal ambition. I think he's checked out on being governor. He's been there, done that, not interested in doing it. Now he wants to be a national figure. Donald Trump will give him that opportunity. And he wants to be in a position to run for president again. And if he's in a Trump cabinet, he will have that. Being governor of North Dakota does not get you any exposure. So I think this is all about Doug Burgum. And I think he has compromised his principles and his values for his own personal gain.
I agree. Port had written something a while ago that he believed that Doug Burgum was doing what he was doing, being a surrogate for Trump, because he thought it would help the state of North Dakota. Because if you get on the wrong side of Trump, then he's going to screw you over and he's going to make you pay. I laughed when I read that. I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that Doug Burgum, like you think, that it is all about narcissism and personal political ambition. And I think it's a relevancy thing that Doug Burgum ran for president learned that he wasn't relevant, learned that he wasn't ready for prime time. I think in some ways was embarrassed with his campaign. And so his ticket to, not fortune, fame and political power nationally is to leech on to Donald Trump like a parasite and sell every shred of integrity that he has down the river so that he can be in Washington, D.C. and run for president again in 2028.
I agree. Doug Burgum, when he endorsed Donald Trump, he can't say, even though it's true, I'm endorsing him because I want to be in his cabinet, so he has to come up with some other bogus reason, that reason being, well, I think it's best for North Dakota, overlooking the fact that Joe Biden is president now, and North Dakota is doing very, very well.
Yes.
Unemployment is extremely low. Oil production is at record highs. But he has to sell the narrative. He can't make it about himself, but we all know it's about himself. It's crystal clear.
Let me ask you this question, and I ask this of all of my political buddies, and I don't know that I've found an answer that's satisfactory to me. But you just said, and I agree, that things in North Dakota right now are really good. There are billions of dollars in the coffers.
Huge surplus.
Huge surplus. And that's not going to stop anytime soon because the pumping of oil is not going to stop anytime soon,
right,
despite the screaming and the sky is falling warnings from the oil industry and their surrogates and their bobos. Things are good. North Dakota is a safe place to be. Personal incomes are pretty good compared to what they've been, largely because of oil.
Absolutely.
There are more job openings by far than people to work them, hence the low unemployment rate.
You want a job? Come to North Dakota. You'll find one.
The city of Fargo is growing like crazy. The city of Bismarck is growing like crazy. Rural North Dakota has its issues, has its challenges, but that's not new. It's always been that way. Mm-hmm. So why are North Dakotans, especially rural North Dakotans and those west of, the Fargo city limits, frankly, why are they so angry? Why do they think that North Dakota is in such a terrible position? Why do they look at Donald Trump and say he's going to save America because this country is going down the toilet under Democrats, under Joe Biden, and Minnesota's in the toilet under Tim Walz, which it's not. I live in the state. Minnesota's doing just fine. Thank you very much. Why are North Dakotans and other Americans who support Trump so strongly, why are they so angry, Jim?
Well, in North Dakota, you're generally brought up to be a Republican conservative. So right away there's that advantage. But I also think it's a lot of it's the media. People tune into the media that kind of reinforces their own opinions.
Fox News.
So, yeah, I'm talking Fox News and OAN. They watch them. They get
Beck.
worked. They get Beck, exactly.
God awful.
They get, I guest hosted there, and needless to say, I haven't heard from them in years. But they are influenced by the craziness. It's all around them, and their buddy says it, and then they say it, and this is what gets me, because the country is doing very well now. Joe Biden has accomplished enormous things, and I'm not saying this because of any partiality in my politics. I consider myself an independent. But it's not connecting, and it's not connecting because they're hearing horror stories about how things are worse than they really are. They believe what they want to believe. And I don't know how that can change. Which is different. I mean, if you look at how North Dakota was not that long ago, it's almost hard to believe that our two senators, and our congressmen were all Democrats. We had some Democratic governors. We had occasional Democratic control of the legislature. But then Fox News and social media came along, and that was that. And the Democratic Party is irrelevant in North Dakota. And we have this real urban-rural divide nationally. And so, of course, it's going to happen in North Dakota. And the legislature just reinforces it. but we've seen it played out. It's embarrassing. It was embarrassing when COVID hit, and the anti-science folks came to the forefront, and North Dakota was the death capital of the world from COVID. What's wrong with people? How do they not believe that this virus can kill you, does kill you, and how do you not believe that there's a vaccine out there that can save your lives? So I'm sorry that this state has gone from, really was right in the center of common sense to extreme crazy.
Are we just a dumb country? Are we stupid? Because I'm working on a newsletter that's going to be published tomorrow morning, and as I've sat thinking about this and trying to come up with the best way to phrase it without being too brutal, I finally just said, to hell with it. I'm just going to be brutal. I think that a large portion of our country is dumb. And it's not because they differ with me with our views. You know, I can have a discussion with somebody and they want taxes cut, and I don't want them cut, or at least not to the extent that they want them cut. You can have a legitimate debate over that. I can have a discussion with somebody about regulation, environmental regulations, and I'm very much of somebody who wants clean water, you know, clean air, all of those things that I value because of what I enjoy in life and what I think is important. I can have those discussions. But when people start talking about, they're worried about migrants from Mexico coming to, just to name a town, well, Spearfish, South Dakota. There was a story a year ago or 2 years ago that people in Spearfish, South Dakota were attacking a United States senator verbally who came to visit their town because they were saying they couldn't walk down this main street of Spearfish anymore because they were so afraid of crime in Spearfish, where there had been one murder in like the last 10 years. There couldn't be a more safe place in America, or a more beautiful place than Spearfish, South Dakota. And yet, that's what those people believed, was that they were in danger of migrants from the southern border coming to kill them. And to me, Jim, that's not, it's the influence of Fox News, it's the influence of talk radio, right-wing social media, Facebook, of going down to the local VFW and being surrounded by 20 people telling you that the Mexican border is a disaster and they're all coming to get us. But at some point, you have to be able to discern the truth and reality and common sense from BS. And I don't know that we can anymore in this country.
I don't know that we can either. And the immigration issue is a perfect example. It is so rotten how these migrants have been demonized. And I've been to the border. I've interviewed them. I've talked to them. And they are attempting to come here for the same reasons that your ancestors and my ancestors and millions of other people's ancestors came here. For a better life. Maybe be able to get a job, maybe escape oppression, because they are leaving situations where they could be killed. They have no money. And that is 99.9% of the migrants. They are good, decent people just looking for a chance. And the way we demonize them and call them rapists and drug dealers and criminals is appalling. And people are falling for it. They're falling for it. The Kelly Armstrong just a couple of weeks ago, when he was arguing on behalf of the bogus impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, said, well, North Dakota, we have a big problem because of the migrants, fentanyl. People are dying of fentanyl. Okay, that fentanyl is coming from U.S. citizens. It's not coming from the migrants. They're not coming here to do that. Maybe there's a couple out of the millions. But the border has become the number one issue. And to give you a sense of just how insane all this is, So, meanwhile, we have people in Ukraine who are desperate. They are starting to be overrun now by the Russians because we won't give them aid. And could you imagine Ronald Reagan, when he was president, siding with Vladimir Putin and the Russians over an innocent country like Ukraine? But that's where the House Republicans are at. And I bring that up because Joe Biden, in his effort to get desperately needed aid for Ukraine, called the Republicans' bluff and said, okay, you want a tough immigration bill? You got it. You got it. We're going to cut down on asylum. We're going to kick out more people. We're going to give you just about everything that you want. This is your best chance to get it. And they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because their cult leader, Donald Trump, said, no, I want this as an election issue for me so I can get elected. So the crisis at the border is so urgent that they refuse to do anything to help. So they can then spread the message to deceive the American people that it's Joe Biden's fault and nobody's doing anything, when the Republicans were in a position to pass meaningful legislation and they chose not to.
And the issue I always look at when we talk about the stupidity of so many Americans is the large cities, the metro areas. And you're a Boston guy. I've had the good fortune the last couple of years of traveling to all the hot spots, or many of the hot spots that many Republicans and many people who support Donald Trump believe are on fire or war zones or so dangerous that once you get inside the city, you're going to get shot or robbed or raped or mugged or beaten up or whatever. I've been to New York City. My wife and daughter have been to Boston recently, Seattle, Minneapolis multiple times, of course. None of what Fox News shows you is happening in those cities. Was there a spike in crime during and shortly after COVID? Yes, there was. Is it unsafe to walk through downtown Minneapolis or downtown San Francisco or Manhattan in New York? No, because I've done it in all three of those places multiple times in some cases.
My two daughters live in New York, and they are very comfortable and not afraid.
Yep. And so that's it's remarkable that, and you can't tell these people that that's the case. They don't believe you. I can tell somebody, I was just in New York, spent 5-6 days there, didn't ever feel threatened, didn't see the city burning down, didn't see anybody get mugged, didn't see dead bodies littered in the streets. None of this is actually happening. They don't believe you because they heard on conservative talk radio or they saw on Fox News that the city of New York is burning down as we speak. And I don't know that we can get, as you said earlier, I don't know that we can get past that.
I don't know either. It's stunning when you look at the cult leader and all the things he has said and done, which normally in, normal times would disqualify a candidate. It just broadens his base.
Yeah. Yep.
He's broken every rule in the book, and people cling to him. Could you imagine supporting a guy who has been charged with 91 crimes or has been convicted in civil court of raping a person or has been convicted in civil court of running fraudulent business practices and owes more than $400 million? Nothing. Doesn't matter. We still love this guy. He's a crook. He's a con man. Don't bother me with that.
So let me ask you this, because this is another one that I, as we hurtle toward the election, and I see the end of democracy at the end of the tunnel, and I see Donald Trump winning in November, as you do. The question I keep again turning over in my head is, why this guy? Why is this guy the one who's going to crap on the Constitution, put it through a paper shredder, and declare himself president for life, and have a minority, but a large portion of the country say, yeah, that's what we want because he's a strong leader. Why is it this guy?
I wondered that too. I wondered that when Republicans were supporting him. Let's say the first impeachment. Well, if Trump was out, you would have had Mike Pence, who is the ultimate true conservative, without the character flaws, without the cruelty and the dishonesty. Maybe it's because Trump was on television. Maybe they see him as charismatic. There's something about him that lures them in, that connects with him. And the crazy thing is, he doesn't care about the voters. He cares about himself, as you touched upon earlier. It's all about loyalty to him. He's not out to improve anyone's lives. You're not going to benefit from him. And
I think
it's astonishing.
I think that's part of connecting the question I asked you earlier, and I'm asking you unanswerable questions, so I apologize for that. But it's a fun debate that I like to have because I know a lot of things. I'm real smart. I have a big brain, but I can't figure out certain questions about him and about his voters and about those who absolutely would fall on the sword for Donald Trump. I don't understand it at all. But I think part of it is, I think there's a segment of America, and you can look at North Dakota, rural Minnesota, that feel that somebody else that they don't want to get a break, or somebody else that they don't want to be given a quote-unquote advantage, is getting an advantage over them. Whether that person is a black person, whether that person is a gay person, whether that person is a woman, period, just a woman, not a gay woman, not a black woman, just a woman, whether that person is an immigrant, whatever the case might be, there is a large segment of certain portions of the country that look at it and say, well, my God, they're giving that person all these things. Why am I not getting any of that?
You're right.
And let me expand a little bit. The fact is that those people are getting many things. If you look at the Farm Bill, if you look at, in the state of Minnesota, local government aid, if you look at welfare programs, heating assistance, et cetera, food stamps or EBT cards, whatever you want to phrase it, people in certain parts of the country who are angry that others are getting things are also getting many, many things.
You're right. Donald Trump brings out the worst in us. And for those who might quietly have been bigots, now it makes it a little more comfortable for them. Yeah. Donald Trump is very divisive, and he's created an us versus them. The them being, as you said, they could be people of color. There's certainly the migrants. There's certainly LGBTQ women, at least as far as women's productive rights. And he's made it fashionable to hate and to see good people as the enemy. A lot of people are believing this. In some respects, he's like Hitler, looking for scapegoats to justify his cruelty. Now, I'm not saying he's Hitler. He's not pushing gas chambers or mass murder, but he is exploiting the us versus them, and he is exploiting the cult of personality where people rally around a guy who was clearly unhinged and clearly unfit for office, and yet will likely be president again, at least as of today.
Germany in 1936 was a much different place than America in 2024. And this goes back to what I said earlier, that things are pretty good right now in North Dakota. Things are pretty good right now in rural Minnesota.
You know what's interesting?
Things are pretty good in the United States of America. Things were not really good in Germany in 1936 because of the Treaty of Versailles, because of the reparations that Europe and the world demanded out of Germany after World War I. Things were not good for your average normal citizen in Germany in the 1930s, 1932, 1934. It wasn't good. That's part of what led to Hitler's rise to power.
Correct.
That ain't America in 2024.
No, but people now don't realize how good it is. Wages are skyrocketing. You can have your pick of jobs. Unemployment is at the lowest level in 50 years. We have all this building going on with infrastructure. People got checks in their pockets from COVID relief. We talked about the oil production. But and here's something that you would think would connect with people. Their 401ks. Booming.
Yep.
Booming. I don't know if you've looked at yours.
I have.
But the stock market is at all-time highs. For the life of me, I do not understand why this does not connect. Yes, I understand. Joe Biden, he's old. So was Donald Trump. But the fact that Joe Biden is old should not be a reason to vote for Donald Trump. Things are going, but the Biden campaign has done a horrible job in communicating to the public all the good that has happened in the country over the last 3 years.
I'm going to pivot just a little bit, and we have about 10 minutes left. And I'll have you back. We have plenty of time until the election day. But as long as we're speaking about Trump, and as long as we're in the state of North Dakota, and as long as we've talked about Doug Burgum, I just need to ask you your thoughts quickly on Governor Burgum has said he's not going to run again.
Right.
He has endorsed his lieutenant governor, Tammy Miller, to be the next governor. Kelly Armstrong, who has spent the last 8 years in Washington, D.C.
Since 2018, since Kramer moved from the House to the Senate. So 6 years.
6 years. Kelly Armstrong has spent that time in D.C. as the lone U.S. representative for North Dakota. He wants badly to get out of Washington because he hates it and wants to come back and be governor of North Dakota. There's going to be a contested primary. There's going to be, I think, a nasty primary between Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong, because whoever wins the Republican primary is going to be the next governor of North Dakota. They are both positioning themselves, especially Tammy Miller, to be buddies of Donald Trump. And obviously Burgum is close to Trump, or trying to be as close to Trump as he can, and that's going to help, he thinks, Tammy Miller. Who's going to get closer to Donald Trump? And how much is that going to help them be the next governor of North Dakota? And does Kelly Armstrong have any chance to get as close to Donald Trump and to get his endorsement as Tammy Miller does in what she's trying to do?
He might. I think Doug Burgum's endorsement of Tammy Miller means nothing for a couple of reasons. First, I think Burgum's popularity has peaked. He has kind of ticked off people from all sectors, the far right of his own party, certainly the far left, and even the centrists. They just kind of see what he's become. And I wrote this, I'm not convinced that if Doug Burgum ran for re-election, he would have gotten the nomination. If he got the nomination, he would have won because he would beat the Democrat. But Campbell was going to run against him. And I think Campbell might have got it, because I just think there's a little bit of Doug Burgum fatigue. But my opinion is whoever's going to get the nomination, whoever wins the nomination, comes down to one thing: who's going to get Donald Trump's endorsement? Donald Trump will swing it if indeed he decides to endorse either one of them. And it's so fascinating and again so disturbing that right now this campaign, based on their ads, is all about these two sucking up to Donald Trump and these two dumping on Joe Biden as if they're running against Joe Biden.
Right.
They don't talk about each other. They don't talk about their true opponents. It's all about Joe Biden should not be a factor in this race, and to a lesser extent, Donald Trump should not be a factor. So there is a chance that Trump could go for Armstrong because he has supported his policies. But my guess is if Trump endorses somebody, it'll be Miller for two reasons. One, as a favor to his boy, Doug Burgum. And number two, because Armstrong, and this is how low the bar has become now in judging people, Armstrong, in a rare show of integrity for people in that party in the House did not vote to overturn the 2020 presidential election. And that may come back to bite him when he's looking for Trump's endorsement, which is clearly what he's looking for, because they're both bragging about how much they love Donald Trump, which is just appalling.
And that's why when you said that both of them have a chance to get Trump's endorsement, I disagree. I don't think that Kelly Armstrong has any chance of getting Donald Trump's endorsement. And what he's doing with his advertising and with his campaigning is embarrassing himself for something he's never going to get.
Yeah, he's really. That's.
Yes.
I can't believe this is Kelly Armstrong.
Right.
Do you think then that the winner of that primary is going to be the person who gets Donald Trump's endorsement?
No, I think that Trump is going to endorse before the primary.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The winner of the primary between Armstrong and Miller. Whoever Trump endorses, that's our next governor of North Dakota.
I don't know that that's going to be the deciding factor, but it's going to help. I don't know that I'm probably contradicting myself because it is the cult of Trump, but I don't know that when he endorses, I'm just going to say it, when he endorses Tammy Miller, I don't know that that's going to be the deciding factor, but maybe it will be. Maybe that's just enough. It's just so odd what has happened to people and people that I know, people that you know, that it is so strange since 2016 to look at some people that I have known for decades and just go, wow, okay.
I know. You're smarter than that. I have a longtime friend of mine who I grew up with, and he's telling me how he thought he's convinced the election was stolen and Trump is the real winner. And this is a highly educated, highly successful man. And I said to him, what's wrong with you? You're smarter than that. You know better. There is no proof of that. None. Nada. How can you possibly think, I just think there is? And there's millions of people out there.
Yeah. So here's something. So the State of the Union is going to be Thursday. Here's something that I've thought about because I have apparently way too much time on my hands. You remember the last State of the Union that Biden had, or one of the last? I think it was the most recent. Kelly Armstrong was sitting next to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yes.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene was heckling the President of the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And Kelly Armstrong kind of had a smirk on his face and wasn't participating, but wasn't like blanching and having a weird, he was sort of smirking and smiling. Kelly Armstrong is going to go farther than that this time. If he gets camera time, we're going to see him giving a thumbs down or hooting something at Joe Biden, because that would then become a campaign piece for him to show North Dakotans, look how much I hate Joe Biden, that I heckled him at the State of the Union address sitting next to Marjorie Taylor Greene or whomever he's sitting next to. It's out there. That's right. I mean, that's totally, that's me, throwing something out in the stratosphere that is probably a pretty stupid thought, but
it's not
that's
a
what
stupid
politics
thought.
are
Right.
in 2024.
The sad part of that is conduct totally unbecoming a member of Congress, and yet it could and would help Kelly Armstrong in his run for office.
And that's not Kelly Armstrong. And I don't know Kelly well, but I know people who do know Kelly well. And what they have told me is back when he was a state representative in North Dakota, he was a normal guy. That you go out and drink beer with him, and he was just a normal, middle-of-the-road Republican who had all the beliefs you thought a Republican would have about cutting taxes and we have to drill for more oil because his family's in the oil business. But he was a normal guy who would look at Donald Trump and shake his head and go, God, that guy's nuts. And now Kelly Armstrong has to do what he's doing to be elected in North Dakota.
Right. It's all about self-preservation. If you're a Republican and you want to be in office, you have to be a MAGA Donald Trump bootlicker, or else you're going nowhere. Sad state of affairs.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for doing this with me.
It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Can we do it again?
Absolutely. You ask. I'll be here.
All right. Thank you. Jim Shaw, you read his column at inforum.com and in the forum itself. and you hear him occasionally guest hosting and being a guest of Joel Heitkamp on KFGO Radio in Fargo. This is the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for listening to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. For more podcasts and columns, head to Inforum.com and search Mike McFeely.